The mess hall was loud with the usual chaos of a military base. Metal trays clattering, boots scraping against the polished floor, and soldiers exchanging stories over quick meals. It was the kind of place where reputations were quietly measured and newcomers were noticed immediately. That's why the woman sitting alone at the end of the long table stood out. She wasn't in uniform, just a simple blue shirt and dark pants, her posture relaxed but composed. Her eyes moved carefully across the room, observing more than participating. A group of Navy SEALs had just come in from training, still carrying the intensity of the field with them. Among them was a tall, confident operator known for his sharp humor and even sharper instincts. He spotted her almost instantly. "Who's that?" one of his teammates asked. "No idea," he replied, grabbing a tray, "but she doesn't look like she belongs here." They sat nearby, curiosity quickly turning into quiet speculation. She didn't look nervous, didn't try to blend in. That alone was enough to draw attention. After a moment, the SEAL stood and walked over, a smirk playing on his lips. He leaned slightly on the table across from her, just enough to establish presence without being outright hostile. "Mind if I ask you something?" he said casually. She looked up at him, calm and steady. "Go ahead." He tilted his head, studying her. "Which war were you in?" A couple of nearby soldiers chuckled under their breath. It sounded like a harmless joke. She looked too young, too composed, too out of place. But she didn't laugh. She held his gaze, completely unfazed. Then she said, quietly, "Ask your grandfather." The words landed like a dropped weight. The smirk on his face didn't vanish immediately, but it faltered, just slightly. "What?" he asked, unsure if he heard correctly. "Ask your grandfather," she repeated, her tone unchanged. Now the laughter had stopped. Something about the way she said it wasn't a joke. The SEAL straightened a bit, his curiosity sharpening into something else. "That's not really an answer." "It is, just not one you're ready for." Before he could respond, the doors of the mess hall opened sharply. The room shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence as a group of high-ranking officers entered, command presence heavy, their expressions focused. It wasn't unusual for officers to pass through, but this was different. There was urgency in their movement and direction. They weren't scanning the room. They already knew where they were going, straight toward her. The SEAL stepped back instinctively as the officers approached. One of them, a general with decades of service written across his face, stopped directly in front of the woman. Then, without hesitation, he saluted. A full, crisp, unmistakable salute. The entire room froze. Every soldier within sight snapped to attention, confusion spreading like wildfire. The woman stood slowly, returning the salute with precise, practiced ease. "Ma'am," the general said, his voice carrying quiet respect, "we didn't expect you on site this early." "I prefer to arrive before the noise," she answered. Another officer stepped forward, lowering his voice slightly. "There are people here who don't know who you are." She glanced briefly toward the SEAL. "That's fine. They're not supposed to." The SEAL felt a chill crawl up his spine. His earlier question echoed in his head. "Which war were you in?" He swallowed. The general turned slightly, addressing the room. "For those wondering, you are in the presence of someone whose service predates most of your records and whose missions were never meant to exist." Silence. Heavy. Absolute. The SEAL looked at her again, really looked this time, not at her clothes or her age, but at the quiet confidence, the stillness, the weight behind her eyes. "You weren't joking," he said quietly. "No," she replied. He hesitated. "My grandfather. He served." "I know," she said. That stopped him cold. "What?" he whispered. She held his gaze for a moment longer. "He was there," she said. "He just didn't know I was." The room seemed smaller now, closer. Realization began to settle in, slow and overwhelming. She wasn't just experienced, she was something else entirely, a ghost in history, a name never written down, a presence felt but never confirmed. The SEAL straightened fully now, the last trace of arrogance gone. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm with respect. She gave a small nod. "No need," she said. "You asked a fair question."
I didn't understand who I was talking to. That's the point, she replied. The officers stepped aside slightly, waiting for her next move, but she remained still for a moment longer. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "Next time you ask someone about war, be ready for the answer." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit, the officers following in step. The doors closed, and the noise didn't return. Not right away, because every soldier in that room understood something now. Some legends don't wear medals, some stories aren't written in history books, and some warriors are only remembered by those who survived long enough to tell the tale.